Hello, this is Gary King here at Foret Studio. I did a chat a little while ago with my good old mate Gina over in Oz, and it's been long overdue, so here it is. The audio is a little bit in places, as it kept dropping in and out, as you would probably expect, but I think you'll get the gist. So we talked about a bunch of stuff, and or should I say I did, because you know me, I can't stop talking, but also covering the new record, the new Life Force record that we just finished and is out now. I'll put a link in the description below, but I'd like to thank everybody that was involved in the recording. Gus, Lucio, of course Lucio, my main man, Fab, and all the guys on the Aussie side that were involved with this. Really appreciate the work that you put in. Anyway, like I said, the audio's a bit funny in places, but I think you get the idea. So here we go. Hey, it's Gary here at Foret Studio. We've decided to do a very long overdue chat for the Foret Studio channel. So I've got my old mate Gina here over in Oz.
Hello.
And if we got it, the connection isn't great for anyone listening in, so you're gonna have to put up with this. But
howdy.
Yeah. Hello, old Crocodile Dundee land over there. So we decided we've been talking about doing this for a long time.
We have.
And I know that there are a few people who listen in to some of these things. But so we finally decided to, after all the work on the third record, I'm going to ask Gina some questions.
Yay.
And then at the end we'll talk a little bit about the album, because the focus is always on the recording as opposed to how we actually get to do the recordings in the first place. So I'm going to ask you, mate, and I know all the answers anyway. Of course I do, because I've asked you these 100 times anyway, right? We kind of got together about 10 years ago now, didn't we?
It's been ages.
Yeah, crazy, right? And I'm quite proud. I've just had my 60th birthday, so
happy
I'm quite
birthday.
proud to be still being able to do this, and at 60. Anyway, so I'm going to ask Gina some questions about. Let's first. I mean, I know a few people have asked you this before, but let's just start from the beginning, because I didn't realise myself that you really haven't actually been doing this that long, have you?
No, recording's only been the last 12, 13 years. I'm a late bloomer. Yeah, well, look, when you compare it to other artists out there, I didn't get started until my early 30s, so it really isn't that long.
Not in the grand scheme of things, like when we talk about, what was it that kind of really kind of inspired you to want to do this? Because I know you've always been a music fan anyway, but you must have just said to yourself one day, I'm going to have a go at this, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it stems back to when I was a kid. I've got memories of getting together with my cousin. I think I was about 10 years old at the time. I remember she had this massive balcony, and we used to grab our deodorant cans and pretend that we were singing into microphones, as you do when you're kids. But then we grew up and I forgot all about it. And never in a million years did I think that I was going to go down that path again. So never say never.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that things happen for a reason, and I've enjoyed the experience.
Being a singer.
Yes, being a singer's great, but I've had a lot to learn.
Yeah, you must have been listening to things, and you must, because like, I remember, when I was a kid, a friend of mine had drums, and I was like, I want to have a go at that, and of course you end up in the place that we are now. You must have been listening to things back then. So when you were a wee bit younger, what were the bands that you were listening to back then?
It was probably just whatever I heard on the radio. My parents weren't really into music. They didn't have a lot of money. They used to work really hard. I think we just had a basic stereo at home. And I remember my mum putting on the most daggiest music. And I think it was something like Electric Light Orchestra. But, apart from that, we didn't really listen to music at home. Music wasn't something that we were encouraged to explore, because that generation doesn't consider it a good way to make an income. However, when I got into my teens, all my cousins were in garage bands, and they used to get together with their friends, fully decked out with drums, bass, guitars. They had a singer, and they were right into their Black Sabbath and Deep Purple, Metallica. And I thought, oh, this is great. I want to be like that. Kind of didn't really eventuate though, because I think I was more into the boys at that time than music itself. It really wasn't until I got married. My husband Frank was a big music enthusiast, and he introduced me to a whole heap of new listening material.
And stop you there and just say a big shout out to Frank as well, because I have to get this one in, because if it wasn't for Frank, we wouldn't have been able to do half of the stuff we're doing, and he's had to put up with a load of nonsense, hasn't he? So,
That's so true.
Bless him, top man, Frank, and cheers, mate. But yeah, so like we said, in the early days, I mean, I know it's a similar story for a lot of people, and then how we sort of get into doing what we've done and so on. But let's talk a little bit about because obviously, like, I'm very biased to what we do, because I'm probably your number one fan, maybe apart from Frank, I don't know. But from a songwriting point of view, when you started to, I know you've played in some other bands and you've done all that kind of stuff, but when you actually started to sit down and think about writing these parts for these songs, because of course, for anybody that listens to Gina's stuff, it is very theatrical. They're all based around themes. What was it, do you think, that made you decide to go down that route rather than just write sort of pop rock type of songs? You obviously must have thought, well, I want to do something a bit different. So what was it that sort of triggered you off to do that?
I've very much been sort of emotion driven, really. Well, I like the whole themed album sort of thing, but it's always been centred around my thoughts and feelings and what was happening around me at that particular time. And it's quite easy to incorporate that sort of thing into a themed album. When I look back years ago to when we created Dragon Tears, I mean, that was very much an experimental work. And the story for that, well, I very much wanted to create something along the lines of a Japanese geisha tale, very gothic. I think I was right into dragons at the time, and it was actually Year of the Dragon, if I remember right. Kind of sounds cheesy now when I look back, but it was a really great learning curve on how to piece things together and develop an album in general. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it does. I know a few people have done the same type of thing, over the years. It is a sort of, it's more of an experience, isn't it? It's not,
it is.
None of the things that you've done, love them or hate them, whatever, are something that you can just pick a track and play it. I mean, you can, but it is like an old school record where you have to sit down and listen to it from the beginning to the end.
Well, that's right.
To me, it's not something that you can just stick on whilst you're chatting to friends over coffee as background music. You got to sit and listen to it. And I think that's one of the things that I liked so much about it was, of course, when we were younger, we used to go out and buy records.
That's right, it's all gone.
We used to stick them on, and we used to read all the notes and the credits and look at the artwork and stuff like that, which, of course, a lot of that has gone now. So it was such a great thing to almost have somebody give me something that took me back to like when I was 15, 16 and went to a record store to buy something, and one of the things that makes it different. But from a songwriting aspect, songwriting is a real craft, in my opinion. I mean, it's something that someone's gifted with, and we've talked about this before. For somebody who wasn't sort of schooled in this type of thing, you taught yourself as you went along. But what was your original process when you first started? You got your computer and you started composing using loops and little snippets of audio to be able to build these tracks. How did you start to do that? You obviously had to teach yourself in the first place how to make it work, right?
Well, I think it was a lot harder 20 years ago. Things are definitely a lot easier in today's day and age. There's some great software out there now, like Logic Pro, Studio One, Pro Tools. They all come with a great selection of loops and orchestral elements. So for me, I always used to come up with an idea in my head, and then I'd try and replicate that idea with the software, laying out the full song structure, laying down the vocals, building around the vocal line, adding the sort of sounds that I would expect to go with it, like a lot of strings, keyboard parts. It goes hand in hand with symphonic music, really. So by the time I've finished adding my chord progressions, I'd come up with a finished song, and you could quite easily give it to anybody and they would be able to understand what sort of style and feel you're aiming for.
Yeah.
You know, even if you didn't have all that software, even just coming up with a simple lead sheet with chord progressions is all you would need to give to other musicians to work on. And, you know, I think I did exactly this for Breathe on the Life Force album. I just put down a simple lead sheet with a vocal line and everyone got what I was trying to achieve straight away. But, you know, it should get easier as you go along. And then once you get over that first song, the whole process of songwriting becomes easier and easier.
Yeah, it's quite funny actually, isn't it? That for anybody that's listening in and I know pretty much everybody follows the same process, but you know, over 3 sort of albums worth of material and some other extra bits and pieces, we very rarely changed anything as such. It was like the layout actually worked. You've never sent sort of like ideas. This is an idea for this. It was like, this is the song called blah blah blah. That's it. Which I always thought was fascinating, and apart from maybe
it was a little bit different with the second album because obviously the first album took 2 years to complete because it was a work in progress. But with album 2, I think all those songs were written over a period of 2 weeks, and I remember, how am I going to hurry up and come up with ideas for another whole album in a couple of weeks? And I remember I had my laptop on holidays, and I'm there laying down ideas for, I think it was just a verse, chorus, and then a bridge section, and that's all I came up with, because to get together 10 songs in a week is a week or two is pretty hard to do. But everyone still knew what I was trying to achieve, and I think it's important to add that you need to have a really great team around you that kind of understands what you're trying to do.
Yeah, the overall structures of the songs, like I said, from my end, it was like, you know, I got it from day one. Like, yeah, I know exactly what we're going to do with this. There was no having to rethink anything.
True.
It was just like it was there, you know. And I think that is, again, it's almost like, was like a band mentality in a way, even though everybody is from different places. I think we all really understood 90% exactly where you wanted to go and what the idea was, especially with, you know, I know you said on that thing about, you know, we changed a few vocal lines, but all we really did was got the bigger, heavier vocal as the lead, and then the more operatic ones as maybe the backup vocals in places. But, you know, one of the things I was going to say is, for anybody out there that's like, you know, looking at writing, and how people are able to structure, because a lot of these artists that we see, and a lot of people think that they, you know, we love the song by so-and-so, and then you find out that actually the person singing it has never written a song in their life. And they are written by songwriting companies, you know, which has been the norm for a long time. I mean, Elvis never wrote a song, Frank Sinatra never wrote a song, Tony Bennett never wrote a song. You know, you can go through all of those sort of people. But I was going to ask you 3 things. If you just say you had a young singer in front of you, somebody you know, not a band, but a singer, somebody you wanted to write that could play a bit of keyboards, what would be the 3 most important things that you've learned if you were going to advise anybody on songwriting, melodies, you know, to put the whole thing together, not go out and play live, not get band members or anything like that, just sit and write? What would be the 3 main things that you would talk to somebody about, that you've learned, that may inspire them and help them do what they want to do?
Well, for me, one of the biggest things is don't try and mimic. There's so many people out there that try their hardest to become exactly like their idols. You know, come up with your own sound. I mean, everyone's voice is different. So as an artist, you really need to embrace your own differences in your vocal and work to its strengths. I've always believed that if you also write music that comes from within, comes from the heart, well, then it's much easier to resonate with people. And sometimes the ideas don't flow. You go through stages of writer's block. But, you know, all it takes is a tiny spark and then the ideas come rushing in again. And, you know, you have to surround yourself with people that are on the same wavelength as you. You know, find the right musicians that are really going to do your music justice, the ones that get the job done. And then you'll find that working as a team, you can achieve great things. In my case, I was very lucky because all the musicians that were involved in my project treated everything as if it was their own.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, there's one. Now you've got to give me two more. Right, so like don't. Here's one. Don't bother.
Or don't give anyone any money.
Know, but but I mean, you know, you remember well, of course you remember because it was only last week. I had that young French guy do that song. I wouldn't say he's been difficult, but it was very difficult to try and explain to him that actually what he was doing was really good. So I sent it to you, didn't I?
Yeah, I loved it.
And I explained the situation. The guy's singing it all in French, right? So it's a little bit more difficult for us to sort of piece together how he was trying to express the phrases and lyrics in this song. So I sent it to you. I got a great response from you. I sent it to him, and now he's happy because a professional singer, songwriter, somebody who can harmonise, understands the conception of putting a concept together, gave him a big thumbs up.
Well, yeah, a bit of encouragement.
And now he's inspired to do some more. And I think that is part of our job, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Well, absolutely.
He's 24 years old. And like you said, you've got to grow a thick skin, haven't you?
Well, yeah, I agree. You do have to have very thick skin in this industry because, you know, especially for a new artist who's just getting used to the sound of their own vocal.
Yeah.
Or, you know, just learning the ropes on writing and recording. You come up with something that you're happy with, you put it out there.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden someone comments on it in a way that you least expect. And it can be very daunting. It can be soul-crushing. But what you've got to remember is there's always someone out there with an opinion. Don't believe everything you read. Look, for every good review, there's always 10 bad ones.
Yeah, 100%.
You just need to learn to be happy with what you've done within yourself. And then if people like it, well, then great. If not, at least you're happy with it. And that's all that really matters. But, yeah, just don't pay any attention to what everyone says out there. I mean, otherwise you'll go nuts. From
a songwriting perspective, we've sort of all heard the stories. We've been in positions ourselves where, you know, we've been told that, you know, you write something for the people that want to buy it. Whereas we think, you know, do you think you should write for yourself? It's important to write for yourself, isn't it? And if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't.
Well, yeah, that's a big part of it. It's being heard. It's creating that legacy of something that needs to be expressed, and you put it out in the universe. And you know, it doesn't matter whether everyone likes it or not. To me, anyway, that's not the whole point of creating. The whole point of creating is to get something off your chest. Sometimes it could be just getting that bit of closure. And if people get it, well, then that's fantastic.
Yeah, well, like we said, you know, they always say, you know, don't buy into your own press. If you get a great review, just leave it at that. You know, we did the track for my neighbour goes by the name of Ekmat, and I sent it to Lucio to play on. And Lucio really liked the song, right? As you know, and my brother said, well, it sounds like Gary Newman as well. Your neighbour sounds like Gary Newman, right? And some guy wrote on the video, garbage, right? And I just thought it was hilarious, right? So I checked this guy out. This guy was called Nicola. I thought Nicola was a girl's name. Anyway, he was called Nicola. So, of course, in my typical Gary King style, I always write on these things, and I just said, thank you very much for your inspiring comment. By the way, nice 80s perm because he obviously got curly hair, but I just thought I'd throw a little thing in there. And the guy wrote back to me, right? He was probably about 18, and he wrote back to me, and he wasn't rude or anything like that. But it's like, first off, if you don't like it, that's fine. Is it garbage? But what the internet gave people was this seat to be able to kind of be mean in a way. And yeah, most of those people have actually got nothing to offer themselves. And when you ask them, well, what should I have done then that would make it better? They have no answer, right? So that's where this whole sort of thing has gone. So you can be criticised by anybody. I remember years ago, we did a showcase at Nomis Studios in London.
Yeah, I remember.
When we were working with Sanctuary Music, and this guy came along. I think I told you this story. This guy came along, and the guy that was sort of running the show, this guy from this label came along. He said, "I don't know why they've sent me here. I hate this kind of music."
Yeah.
So this guy, the guy Simon that was running it, he said, "Well, I think you better leave then, because you're not drinking our wine and eating our cheese and stuff like that, you know, because it was one of them showcase events." And he kicked him out, right? And that was in the 90s, like 92 or something. So you're always going to get that type of thing. And I think because we have grown thicker skin.
That's right.
You know, I'm
Absolutely.
10 years ahead of you. I mean, I'm like an elephant skin now, mate. For younger people that are coming in, if you listen to what everybody else has got to tell you, then it's just going to drag you down, isn't it, at the end of the day? You just need some support from a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about, and you take it from there, don't you?
I couldn't agree more.
So anyway, the other what I was going to ask you as well, you actually have sung. Well, you've sung on a load of stuff with me, haven't you? Like,
Sure have.
yeah. Now, I know that there's that you were telling the guy on the radio podcast. Can't remember his name now, but
Jai.
super excited bloke, absolutely brilliant. When you did that, it was obviously a completely different approach. I think it's important for people to understand about delivering a product as well. As a singer, like if I sent you drums, I would have to make sure that everything was good and so on. When you did that album for those guys, what was your process in recording, working your parts out, and then delivering the product, you know, making sure that everything was good, you know?
Yeah, we were talking about Amphitrite, I think. Well, I had a time frame that I had to supply it in, and I also knew absolutely nothing about the subject matter. But the guys were really great. They sent me finished music, and they sent me the stories that went with everything, because I knew absolutely nothing about Greek mythology. So, they sent the story for each song, and it was broken down to exactly where they wanted vocals, and they said, read this passage here and come up with your own lyric and take particular note of the perspective that we're after. So they kind of just left it up to me to come up with something that fit the brief. And so basically I sent them the first song. I sent them exactly what they asked for, but I thought, I don't know whether they want backup vocals, no backup vocals. So I just sent them whatever I could do. I sent them everything from narrations, and it turned out that there was the chorus section, some of them had about 30 tracks, and I always double up the vocal. But, they liked it and they used everything. I told them, if you don't like something, just don't put it in there. I just didn't know what they were after. But, after I sent them the first song, they just said, do whatever you want. So it was great. And I think I did the whole album, all the vocals were completed in 3 weeks. Nice, clean tracks. I sent them a listening copy with a bit of effect so they can hear it back. And then basically I sent them the individual raw wave files, and then they could chop them up, move them around, do whatever they want with them.
Yeah.
But, I like to give them options. It's just my way of just going above and beyond. And if they use them, great. They're not obligated to.
Well, that's the thing is that you also instill the confidence in those other people, because they go, wow, this makes a change. This is easy. And of course, you and me being the way that we are, again, most people that take this journey and try to do what we've all done for years now, decades, if you can make it easy, people are always going to come back to you, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, it's like when I sent you the song, when I sent you James's song, there's a song on the new record called Tested the Water. And this young guy, James, big shout out to you, James, and to your dad, Steve. James had this song. He put some orchestral keyboards on it. And I said, well, then we got to send it to Gina. It was a song like The Cure. It wasn't anything like how it ended up. But because he put strings patches on it, it turned it into a Gina song, right? So I sent it to you, and even though you didn't write any of it, what you sent back was just like, well, there it is. It's so easy. It's so perfect, you know. There was no ums and ahs or anything like that. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, and I'm sure there's a lot of guys and girls out there that can deliver the same type of thing. But your approach on that, once again, was like, it was so easy. I think something that we've learned along the way, this goes for anything. If you work in a restaurant or you're a gardener or anything like that, if you can make the job easy,
well, yeah,
it's a lot more fun, isn't it?
Absolutely. In the case of Test of the Water, it was such a very well-written song. And when I first heard the original with James's vocal, it was really quite different. And I thought, I hope I can do this song justice. But, you know, you listen to it a few times and then you kind of get the gist of what's happening. And then I really just approach it in the same way that I would record any of my own songs.
Right. I think that's, again, one of the things about the professional mind is, you know, like you said, is like, well
yeah.
You know, the old cliche of if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. And, you know, I mean, like we said, it is difficult for what we try and do. The old story again, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. I know everybody's trying to do it now. One of the other things I was going to ask you, I won't use the terms that they like to use now, these popular terms, but this particular thing is the first and the 9th letter of the alphabet. So we'll just call it for now new tech. With all this new tech, with these stories that we're seeing with people aren't singing live anymore, which has been going on for years, as we know, and now even the bands aren't playing live anymore. It's just like a massive concert, 60,000 people, and they're all playing to the CD. Where do you personally see music going over the next, say, 5 years? Do you think that it's going to end up going back to basics eventually? Because everything goes round in circles anyway, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. Look, AI has its place, I guess. I think it's definitely helped artists cut corners with laying out the groundwork to new ideas. If it's used properly, I mean, if you're just going to push a button and leave it up to the computer to come up with a whole song, well, then that's a different scenario. But, you know, if it's just used in sections to cut corners, then great. But I don't know, everything is just starting to sound so fabricated, the same. That organicness is just gone. So it could go either way. Either music is doomed, or we go back to basics and start all over again. Look, there was a whole band that was made up with AI, right down to the name, the pictures of each band member, not just the music. Like, the whole lot of it was AI.
Yeah, that's right. I saw that.
And you know what? It wasn't terrible either. So, you know, how do you compete with that?
No.
And then, you know, there's also the issue of backing tracks as well. Look, I know it's a big part of music in today's day and age of live performance. And a lot of my music for live does have backing tracks too. But there's a difference between making everything sound exactly like it is on the CD and then altering bits and pieces for live performance, so you've still got that organic point of difference on a live perspective.
When we talk about backing tracks, what you were just talking about is about you haven't got a keyboard player, so you've got blanket strings and stuff like that played from the computer. So the computer is basically the keyboard player. If you had a keyboard player, you wouldn't do that necessarily. But it's when a very famous singer is obviously not singing. And that's been going on since the Britney Spears days and all that kind of stuff. And somebody said, oh, well, you know, what you're buying into is the experience. It's the experience. So it's like, yeah, okay, I understand that as well. And I'm not going to condemn it because, you know, there's a lot of guys and girls who work on these big shows. That's how they make their money. You've got somebody prancing around on stage. You know, there's a guy on the Pegasus channel, and he you might have seen this, mate. He isolated this certain singer's voice and put it through the algorithm, which I've got on the studio machine here, to show the frequencies, and they matched exactly the CD, right? So there's no way you could actually physically do that. And everybody knows when you're dancing around on stage with a headset on and you're being picked up by guys and slid under people's legs, there's no way you can keep a constant note like that. It's not possible. I mean, even Michael Jackson was doing it back in the day, you know. Even the woos and all that were actually coming off of a machine. But what is quite funny is people get really upset and offended when you even say, well, that's not real sort of singing. What I was talking about was when people are able to create music, like you said, by typing into a box, this is what I want, and out the other end comes this piece of music, right? They haven't even had to hum or sing anything. They just type in the text of, I want a song like this, blah, 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 and it all comes out. Now, I know that could be looked at as progression, but that was my question. Do you think, like, as things go round in circles, do you remember a few years ago everyone was saying guitar music is dead?
Yeah.
Do you remember all that? Guitar and drums are dead. It's all loops and no guitars. Well, of course, now everybody's using drums and with loops and real guitars. It's all gone full circle again. Do you think that the classic songwriter style bass, guitar, vocalist, drummer's gonna sneak back in through the back door and then suddenly become really popular again?
Oh, I hope so. Well, look, things go in waves, don't they?
Yeah.
Look, something has to change. We can't.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like the stereotypic band thing will creep back in. All this new stuff will just basically get washed under the bed, and it will go back to the basics.
Yeah, I think, look, there's definitely musicians, like the new musicians of today, that are still interested in trying to replicate sounds of the 70s and 80s. Look, we've got so much technology at our hands now, but does it really compare to some of the early recordings that were done in analogue?
Yeah. Because
so, look, it really comes down to personal taste and what's in at the particular time. Yeah,
well, of course, we live in the generation has changed. It's the quick fix that everybody wants now, isn't it? And it's funny because, again, I think we mentioned this before, and you know, I'm not calling this guy out for being or whatever, but quite famous singing coach in America that you know, and he puts these videos up and they're nearly always girls, right? Because, of course, if he puts a girl singing, he's going to get more hits on his video. And she also has to have her cleavage showing and all this kind of stuff, you know, which I don't have a problem with. But, you know, so this guy, he's very well known, and he puts these videos up with these girls singing, you know, like classic White Snake songs and stuff like that. I think I know. To all intensive purposes, yeah, it looks real, but, you know, they're lip syncing. And then you look at the comments, and the people are freaking out, like, oh my God, this is amazing, and everything. It's like, they're not singing, mate. That is an edited vocal. So, you know, you would think somebody that was their job, they would show you from the beginning and then the end product, which would then give it even more credibility. And that guy's been called out loads of times. This person is standing so far away from the microphone, there's no way. I'm not sort of criticising that. It shows you that the buying audience, the public, they will suck up anything that's thrown at them, no matter what, as long as it sort of tickles their taste buds, you know. And like we said, is, you know, things go round in circles and so on, but the way things have gone out, especially over the last, I would say 10 years especially, you know, I think it's important, and I'll ask you again on this, it's important to be yourself, isn't it, and be original.
Well, yeah, of course. What's the point of doing anything if you're not going to be yourself?
Well, of course, we know.
Be original. You may as well just be an impersonator doing covers.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Is that so many people have fallen into this trap of pretending to be somebody else, and yet the people that they pretend to be were original in...
Well, you know, if I've got nothing against it, if that's what makes them happy, well then fine, but I'd much rather be original.
Yeah, I think that the originality is so important, especially for songwriters, you know. It's better to fail doing what you love to do and be honest to yourself than it is to take the other path and basically pretend to be somebody that you're not, I think, you know.
I agree. Look, there's nothing wrong with having influences. Everyone has influences.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's a big part of shaping your individuality. You draw on these influences and adapt them in your own special way without, you know, necessarily copying their sound. You know, it's like when we look at tribute bands especially, look, don't get me wrong, there's some great tribute bands out there, but then there's some tribute bands that, I don't know, to me, don't do the music justice. When you look at a lot of these hair metal bands of the 80s, you know, back then they all dressed that way with the big hair and they had the outfits, but they were the complete package, and it was quite the norm back then. Nowadays you get tribute bands that they try and replicate how they looked on stage, but they've got these cheesy wigs, and it wasn't cheesy back then, but they've just cheapened it all by making it cheesy. Like, why can't they just get out there and play the music? Why do they have to make it so corny?
My brother was here, a friend of ours, and they went to this biker festival and they had the obligatory AC/DC tribute band, right? And Neil said to me, he goes, listen to this. It was absolutely brilliant, right? But the guy that was singing, he didn't sound anything like. His voice was so good, right? I was like, my goodness, this guy can sing. But he probably knew that there's no way that anybody would be interested in him. You know, like he probably played in bands and everything, and he sort of succumbed to being in this sort of tribute band. But his voice was... I'll have to see if I can find it and send it to you. It was absolutely astoundingly good. But of course, the people were going nuts, you know, and you got the guy wearing the Angus gear and all this kind of stuff. And again, they kind of cheesed it up a little bit. And I thought it was a bit of a shame, because this bloke could probably have sung on any major league rock record that was being written and killed it, you know. But, you know, we've had that sort of thing for a long time now, haven't we, since they did the bootleg Beatles and the ABBA tributes and all this kind of stuff. But we did our little cover thing of Phantom, which came out absolutely brilliant. But as you know, I've always prided myself on to create and not copy. And I think, going back to what we said, and we did it exactly our way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like the classic song. Well, we did it our way, not my way. We did it our way. But, you know, going back to the very first album, stuff that me and Paul did prior to that, even the AGD stuff, which are all the same musicians, by the way, aren't they? We sort of prided ourselves on trying to do good songs and create a good production and getting it out there. So just have a little chat just briefly about... You could promote your new record or our new record, whatever. So we just finished the third instalment of Gina's Crazy Ideas and Mind, called Life Force, which is probably, in my opinion, the best thing I've ever done. So Gina will now tell you a little bit about her new record.
Well, Life Force is a bit more personal than the last two albums. Basically, it was a very long overdue bit of work on my part, all based around my absence from the music industry, especially after going through some of my own health issues and, you know, having to look after sick family members and family members passing away. So basically it's a summary of basically everything that's happened throughout my life, really. Observations of what's happening around me, but stuff that directly affects myself and my family. And it's also about, you know, some good stuff as well. We talked about, like on one of the songs, like the title track, Life Force, was all about reconnecting with friends and musicians from abroad and after all these years coming together to create music that, in my opinion, was just as good as the first two albums. So it's quite amazing, really, when you think about it, connecting with musicians from different countries. And there's also stuff about what's happening in the world as well. When you look at songs like Celebrity Smile, which talks about how far people are willing to go to get where they want to be in the industry. They so want to be famous and so want people to follow them, become the influencer. There's a line that you can cross, and these people just, it doesn't faze them. We're being sensitised every day. As you mentioned before, we were brought up in a different age where family, morals and values were really important. But when you look at, in today's day and age, the younger generation is very sensitised to violence and, what can I say, the whole world's just gone nuts.
People have listened to a couple of things you've talked about, but you went through quite a nasty experience. I've said this before, I say this to you, I've known Gina a long time, and obviously we don't live in the same house, because I don't think Frank would like that too much. But I've never, apart from some frustrations to do with various odds and ends, I've never heard you complain about anything, right? And yet you've been through all these things. You're one of these people, you're a bit like my sister-in-law, Hillary. Big shout out to Hillary. I've never heard you sort of complain like, it's not fair. I know we all go through our days where we're like, why are we even bothering? But that's one of the reasons why you've always been able to keep certain people, the right people, interested in what you do. Because I remember you said to me some time ago, you said to me, am I really difficult to work with? And I was like, no, actually, you're very easy to work with. And that's because, like we said, is that people who have a light-hearted spirit and have energy will always draw the right sort of people to them. And that's no disrespect to other people. It doesn't mean that they're wrong and we're right. All it means is that there's certain times in life where it's like when Lucio sends me, I've said this 1,000 times, when Lucio sends me something, it makes my day. And when you sent me the new songs, you started sending me the new songs, I was like, yeah, great, here we go again. There's never been that, oh no, not this again type of thing, And I think that's one of the things. There's certain groups of people that I'm not fans of for various reasons and that, but it's like working with you has always been, you have those days where you're like, that's normal, isn't it? It's normal life. But everything has always had that element of great energy to it. And then that makes you sort of recollect other things, and then it inspires you to do more. And like you've said, music is supposed to be about inspiring people, not coercing them or influencing them into things that are not necessarily good for the body and the soul. And this album, being biased like I am, of course I am, because I love it and I was involved in it, it was a big uplifter for me as well. It gave me faith again.
Yeah, I agree totally.
So anyway, well, look, unfortunately, the old connection's breaking up a little bit. I'd like to thank my lovely mate over in Oz there for putting up with my nonsense as well over the last few years. But anybody who wants to check out what Gina's doing and so on, I'll put a link in the description below. Anybody who sat and actually listened all the way through this without pulling their hair out, thanks for doing that as well. So I will stop the recording in a minute and then I will carry on chatting to you for 5 minutes. Thanks, mate. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Nice talking to everyone. See ya. Bye.
Au revoir.